a biblical perspective on life, culture, and current events. This is 2020 on Vision.
Well, many of us through the years have seen the sign hanging from the church fence or perhaps a community hall wall. It's the cartoon man carrying a huge red question mark. I am, of course, talking about Alpha, the famous evangelism course that many, dare I say most, churches would have run. Alpha is in over 100 languages and has been run in over 169 nations. And this ministry isn't done yet. It seems that in the 2020s, Alpha is streaking forward and doing an even more innovative job than ever. One major recent development is Alpha Youth. Here today, we welcome Pastor Ben Higgins, Australian Director of Alpha Youth. Welcome, Ben.
Hi guys, great to be with you today. It's a real privilege.
Oh, it's great to have you along with us, mate. It's very impressive, the work that you guys have done with Alpha Youth over the last little while. Why did Alpha, in its core, feel the need to do something directed specifically toward the youth?
Great, yeah, thanks for the question, Tosh. I think firstly, we can't take any credit as a team. From an Alpha perspective, we support the church. We support amazing church leaders and ministries around our great nation that are doing incredible work. And so a lot of what we're attempting to do is really add muscle to the church, particularly in the area of evangelism. And we have just hit quite an exciting milestone. And again, this is really credit to the amazing churches and individuals around our country that run Alpha. We just celebrated last month 1 million Aussies exploring faith on Alpha somewhere in our country, which is incredible. And we've seen for a long time that every generation is different, and we've seen for a long time a need to keep contextualizing Alpha in a way that would resonate with the next generation. And right now around the world, there's about 2.2 billion young people under the age of 18. About 3.3 million of those are in Australia. And half of the world's population, in terms of the younger generation, half of those people live in our region, in the Asia Pacific region. And a couple of years ago, we commissioned a study with a research group called Barna out of the US. It was the largest global study of its kind. And what we found was that increasingly, a little bit different, I'm a millennial, and what we found was with Gen Z and then with Gen Alpha, we were seeing this real spiritual curiosity and openness. And at the end of this research project, they were trying to work out what to call this body of research, and they ended up landing on the name, the Open Generation. Wow. And because of how open, increasingly open the next generation were to conversations about faith, to spirituality. And one of the key findings in the research was 2/3 of young people globally are open to learning more about Jesus. And so, that was all emerging at the same time we were starting to dream about creating the new Alpha Youth series. And I need to give huge credit to the guys in Malaysia, in the UK. In fact, a team of contributors from all around the world that got together and put together this new Alpha Youth series. And since that point, and we've obviously released it this year into Australia, but since that point, we've only seen that openness to faith and spirituality increase. And I'm not sure if you're familiar with any of the research that's coming now out of the UK, particularly the Bible Society have done some great work on what they're calling the quiet revival. And particularly amongst Gen Z, there's, Bible sales amongst Gen Z have surged since 2018 or 2019. 45% of young adults in the UK now say they believe in God. That's up from 28% in only a few years. And we were just there, our Alpha team. We take a group of leaders over every year to sort of see what's happening in the UK. And we're now seeing, church attendance in the UK jump from 4 to 16%. And the biggest rise has been amongst Gen Z men. So there does seem to be something new that God is doing in this next generation. And we just wanted to meet that need. Young people are searching, they're asking questions, they're growing perhaps quite skeptical of what they're being sold in the media. And so they're turning to faith, they're turning to Jesus. So it's really, really exciting.
Well, I have had the opportunity to see firsthand the material that you guys have done, and it's really impressive. And the whole concept of adding muscle to the church and and doing it in just the timing of God, it would seem, with this generation open being investigated, discovered, and then being tailored this material to. What are the unique identifiers of this generation that the material is going out toward, Ben?
Yeah, look, one of the big things we saw was that, the next generation, Gen Z, Gen Alpha particularly, are shaped by their peers. And so we wanted to involve the perspectives and the stories of young people from around the world. The response to that question, in a way, would be shaped by the context in which we live in. So, for a young person, maybe in Nigeria, it's different to a young person, in Sydney. So there are some differences, but there are also some similarities or some consistent themes that we're seeing. And one of those was that, we live in a globalized world. And so young people more than ever have access to more information than ever. They've got access to to different cultures. So we're now seeing cultural trends sort of transcend geographic locations. And I've already mentioned, the spiritual openness. The next generation, they're so intelligent. They really genuinely are asking big questions about life, about purpose, about justice, about God. They're talking about, the real issues facing our world. And so we wanted to shape this new series with those things in mind. So particularly, the new Alpha Youth series, it's been made by young people for young people. So young people were involved in the creation of the series, from scripts to the art design to even the music, the soundtrack. Important to note that the theology wasn't created or crafted by teenagers. We had a whole host of theologians from around the world work on that component of the series. But other than that, young people had a huge part to say in how that was shaped, and particularly even around the language of it. It's hosted by 8 Gen Z leaders, the series itself. And what's pretty cool from an Australian perspective is actually 4 of those 8 young people are Aussies. So 2 from Perth, 2 amazing women in Perth, Mika, and then 2 amazing young people from Brisbane, Isaac and Danielle. And so that's been pretty special for Australia. We've shortened the content, so they're 20-minute episodes, and that enables young people to run Alpha in their schools if they're wanting to do that, which is something we're seeing, a huge rise in. And we've shortened the overall length, so 10 sessions to be run over 8 weeks. So we wanted to make it a bit more accessible for Alpha to be run in places like schools, and we wanted to make sure that the length of each episode, including the discussion breaks, was, taking into account the way that young people are, I guess, consuming or watching media at the moment.
Yeah, it's very impressive. It comes across as very genuine. It seems the presenters that you guys have chosen they really care about what they're sharing with their generation. Really want to have a heart to share the goodness of God in an authentic way. Ben, as a dad, as a pastor, and a professional working in the youth space, what advice would you share with our Vision family that's listening in about discipling this generation? What would you say as a parent? What could you do for your kids to help them integrate their lifestyle with a faith in Jesus?
Yeah, it's a great question. It's something that my wife and I we're constantly sort of asking ourselves. I love the question because I think one of the hesitations I hear from maybe older people, and in fact I've even sort of at times felt this myself, is like I feel at times I'm too old to connect with young people, whether that's in my own home or whether that's, in the work that we're doing with Alpha and around Australia. And you mentioned something before, Tosh, about authenticity. Yeah. And I think that's such a great key, isn't it? Like, one of the things that I would say the next generation are looking for is authenticity. You don't need to be cool to connect with young people. They just really need to know that you care. And I think often we're quick to write ourselves off that we could be used by God in that way to help disciple and mentor the next generation, but it's so needed. And one of the amazing or really interesting findings we found in the research we commissioned with Barna was that young people are now increasingly hesitant to trust online sources of information. So they're actually turning to primarily family members, then friends, and then even to the Bible itself when it comes to looking for truth and looking for something to sort of give them some moral compass or purpose or direction in life. So they're really hesitant to trust, but they've been sold everything. And so they're really, I guess, increasingly skeptical about like what they're seeing online. I guess that's partly with the rise of fake news and all those kinds of things. And so, they're turning to their family, they're turning to friends. And so I just encourage, every parent, I'm not a perfect parent. There are no perfect parents. But, just genuinely being engaged and being involved in your child's faith journey is so critical. And part of that is, I think, just creating space for conversation. And when you think about Jesus' ministry model, I think there's something like, there's a book written about, the way Jesus asks questions. And it's something like for every question Jesus was asked, he asked 100 in return. So wow. It's like if you go through Scripture, you see that Jesus' ministry model itself was centered around asking questions. He walked with people. He listened to them. He ate with them. He sat with them. He asked questions. And there's a guy called David Osberg, and he says this. He says, being heard is so close to being loved that for the average person, they're almost indistinguishable.
Wow, that's a fantastic idea.
It is, isn't it? And I think when we create space for young people to be heard, and that can be in our own homes as well, it equates to them knowing and feeling that they're loved. And I think that's why I'm a fan of Alpha, to be honest, because it does create that kind of space for those conversations and for that listening to take place.
Well, thanks so much for your time here today, Ben. We're coming to an end. We're going to have to wrap it up there. But can you tell us the best way for our listeners, for our Vision family, to be able to get a hold of Alpha Youth?
Absolutely. So everything Alpha does is free. So all of the content, all of the resources, all of the training, our team would love to connect with you. So if you head to alpha.org.au, that's alpha.org.au, you'll find everything there you need to get started. And we'd really be privileged to serve and support you in that way.
Well, thanks so much for joining us today, Ben Higgins, on 2020.
It's been a privilege, guys. Thanks for having me.
God bless. Bye.
Thanks for taking time to listen to this audio on demand from Vision Christian Media. To find out more about us, go to vision.org.au.